All right, good evening. My name is Ian Blackburn, and it's time to zoom into wine. At Zoom Into Wine, operated by my wine store, merchantofwine.com, and in partnership with Learn About Wine and my complete team, we produce a Zoom every Wednesday at 7 o'clock where we get some great people together and we're going to taste some amazing wines. And tonight is no exception. The wines that we're going to be tasting this evening are really great. It's a perfect time of the year to kind of get back in touch with Sauvignon Blanc. And I'm excited to be able to do that with you guys. Just clicking on a couple things, making sure everyone's getting on board okay. We'll be starting here right about now. I've been eager to get to this list of wines. We've got a nice sold out a little tasting tonight. The wines are really solid, and that's what we do at Zoom Into Wine. I use this opportunity to really share some of the finds that we're able to get here at the wine store. Zoom Into Wine is operated by the wine store, Merchant of Wine. So let's get started with some beautiful Sauvignon Blanc. I've got a PowerPoint that'll guide us through our day today. Let me make sure that's up and running okay. Let's talk Sauvignon Blanc. This is a really noble grape variety and has been coming on strong over the past 15 plus years. Obviously all wine has improved quite a bit in the past 20, 30 years. It's remarkable actually how much it has improved to a point where we are really benefiting as consumers. The competition is fierce, keeping prices down as much as possible, but some wines are starting to climb that ladder and really separate themselves. We're going to taste quite a few really amazing examples tonight. And we really celebrate the history of wine, going back almost 7,000 years. Beer goes back about 10,000 years, but wine is really a special product, and we are just getting really good at this. We're going to start off with a wine from France, a Sancerre. Sancerre is the name of the place. Doesn't say anywhere on the bottle that it's Sauvignon Blanc. It's just Sancerre. And I'm struggling to get my first jar open. My God, hands of steel are required to get these open right now. I'm going to have to talk to my team to back it off just a little bit because I feel for you at home if you had to just crank that thing as hard as I did. But we do send out these great little tasting jars. And my team spends a lot of time preparing these and getting these out all over the place. Hope you guys are able to get your jars open. Little rubber thing will help you get the traction there, but that is not easy. Sancerre. This is let me show you where we are. We're at the extreme eastern end of the Loire Valley. You've got famous regions in the Loire creating grapes like Muscadet from Melon de Bourguignon. We've got Semur, Chinon, Vouvray, grapes like Cab Franc and Chenin Blanc. But when that river ends over here on the east-hand side in Sancerre, it is Sauvignon Blanc country. And Menneteau Salon is right nearby. Also Puy-Fumé, a really nice corner for Sauvignon Blanc. Also Quince, Quincy is down there. Roux's down there. And my little wine store, we've got little examples from Roux's, Quincy, Menneteau Salon. And we try to find best of breed type of wines because this Sancerre wine is starting to get pretty pricey. Did you know that it was first planted, though, as a red wine region? It wasn't until the late 1800s when we started seeing phylloxera and all types of vineyard issues really make everybody in France kind of question, what are we planting? Where are we planting it? How was it planted? Kind of spacing, all that stuff. It was like a big reset. And when things reset, things started to change. And Sancerre went from being a mostly red wine region to now mostly white. But they do still make some red Sancerre, and they are made from Pinot Noir. And quite a nice little wine, very different from Burgundy. But a lot of those Sancerre producers are studying in Burgundy in their youth and their college moments, and they're bringing that out, those ideas up to Sancerre to make Sancerre Pinot Noir more interesting, because look at the dollars they're getting in Burgundy for those Pinots. Man, they want those in their little regions too. So we'll continue to see Sancerre climb. The wine that we're tasting today has really been a favorite of mine for a long time. Is well studied, had some great tutelage working in Burgundy, and really carries some high ethos, being organic and biodynamic. There are a lot of great Sancerres, and a lot of them check many of these same boxes. But this is one that I think remains fairly affordable and does a very nice job. When you think of Sancerre and you want to visualize, it's got some really nice steep slopes, really stony soils, and some great exposures. Sauvignon Blanc, 100%, no blending here. That is by rule. In order to be called Sancerre, has to be 100% Sauvignon Blanc. This wine received a score in the 90-point range. They typically have a review that kind of speaks to the typicity of Sauvignon Blanc. So as we taste through all of the Sauvignon Blancs that we're tasting tonight, hopefully you'll see this common thread, very floral, the fruit being kind of focused into the direction of grapefruit and melon. Maybe you might get some in some more dramatic examples, some white stone fruits like peach and apricot, but here the acidity is so drilling, so intensive that it really keeps that mouthfeel very bone dry. The energy kind of refreshing. Tension is a great word to describe that. And we'll see different iterations of Sauvignon Blanc that kind of play on both sides of that a little bit. And we might add a little, it's like a equalizer for a DJ turning up certain volume knobs. They might throw a little wine in wood, or maybe some stainless steel with the wood blended, and maybe why not just throw in a little bit of concrete egg to give it a little bit more texture and things like that. And now we're also seeing some, experimentation with a little bit of skin contact, and we'll just always see it continue to move those dials around a little bit. Here's a picture of our producer, Mr. Crochet. The vineyards, very organized, very organic, biodynamic. Organic carries a, simpler focus of, what you're putting into the vineyard, whereas biodynamic is a complete ecosystem from start to finish. The way you live is the way you're farming. There's no machines in the vineyards, no animals only, basically. That could start to change, by the way. Some interesting things are happening with like electric tractors, zero carbon footprint farming tools. Those are really going to start to increase the amount of biodynamic farming or organic farming that we can see. And that will all result in, again, further wine quality, further improvements. So it's really interesting. This Francois Crochet, right in that nice price point, a little bit below $40, but you're going to see these Sancerres continue to butt up against $40. It's kind of where they live now. And I want to pull down this slideshow and taste this wine with you and get your reaction. I hope you guys enjoy it. That nose is always very restrained. You put your nose on top of the glass, you're not smelling that big whiff of ripeness or wood. You're getting that minerality. You might smell for some of those fruits that we were just talking about, mainly that grapefruit pith, like you're just ripping open a grapefruit. Maybe a little bit of melon, like cantaloupe or honeydew. stony. Can almost see like the whiteness of the soils. There's no clay here per se. It's very high drainage, limestone. It's electric. You can just feel that cleansing, zippy, refreshing, clean, bright. Delicious. Just got back from France, had an amazing meal at an amazing restaurant, and they brought out one of the pairings was a 2014 Sancerre. And these wines age. They can age. They're not necessarily intended to, but they will. And they can put on just a little bit of weight, getting a little bit rounder and richer with time. And this one is delicious. Yeah, refreshing. Thank you for the feedback there. We've got a little chat box. Those on the Zoom with me live, you can use that chat box to give me some of your words, your thoughts. Maybe you don't like the wine. Maybe it's too acidic. Maybe this is too dry. Some people like a little bit of sweetness involved, a ripeness. This is barely ripe, highly acidic, focused. That can kind of erase. Helps when you don't put it down the wrong pipe. I'll be a moment. All right. Hey, occupational hazard. Get my water. I think that I was actually enjoying that wine too much. My my mouth wanted to let my lungs get involved. All right, made it through that. Bouncing back. So, Francois Crochet, about $37. Don't have a lot of it left. I have about a case and a half. But as you may have noticed, the vintage wasn't as current as some. And I'm going to tell you right now, that's working in your advantage in a couple of ways. Because the current vintage would be over 40 bucks. This has been perfectly laid down and cellared and just continues to get a little bit more weight, gravity, power, intensity. And I really like these wines with 3, 4, 5 years of age. Now, the wine I had in France was a 2014. That was 10 years old. That wine was probably built a little differently and maybe needed a little bit more time too. This one's already cranking, and I really enjoy it. I think my lungs really enjoyed it too. Wow, that went deep. All right, wine number 2. Let's try to keep that down one pipe this time. Now we're going to our friends in New Zealand. And we're going to Craggy Range. Now, I have interviewed many different New Zealand producers, and I love them so much. This is one that I hold a particularly high tier. I was able to visit this winery it was a while back now, but really saw everything that they put together at Craggy Range to make it a world-class operation. In addition to the talent that they've hired and the people that they've brought through, I don't know if some of you guys know, we've had Matt Dees up in Central Coast on our Zooms many times. Santa Barbara, Mail Road, Onada, makes a number of different wines. He worked at Craggy Range. Steve Smith, famous master of wine, worked at Craggy Range. And there's been a really nice churn, slow churn of great talent because they hire them young, bring them in, and keep a lot of really talented hands involved in what's happening at Craggy. We are on the southern island, the southern tip of the northern island in Martinborough. Martinborough is right there. Most of what we taste out of New Zealand is from Marlborough at the northern tip of the southern island. So it's very, very nearby, but the difference is just working into the hands of what they're doing at Craggy. A little less pungent, a little more minerality, and it's just like those volume knob examples again. And maybe you will prefer some things you've had in Marlborough, but I think that Craggy does a really phenomenal job. So focused, so clean, so intense. Craggy Range started in the late 1990s. I was actually working for the importer when this brand was getting started, and they announced it to us, and they announced to the entire sales team that if we did a good job, a couple people get to go to New Zealand. Well, unfortunately, that's not how I got there. I was new to the sales team, and some of those mature reps know where to bury a lot of bodies, and they crushed it and sold tons of Craggy Range. I certainly made a nice impression, but didn't get that free trip. But when I went to Craggy Range, they knew I was coming, and I was still working for them. And wow, did I get spoiled there. They had some really nice accommodations. They have a Michelin star restaurant, and really worth seeking out if you're going to New Zealand. Here's a look at it. And I think those rooms are just out in the back here somewhere. The vineyards, maybe out here in the house, in the trees. I can't remember. But a beautiful place. The thing about New Zealand is each winery is, quite a ways from each other. Typically, you got a couple zones where it's bumper to bumper, but Craggy Range is pretty on its own out here. And you can see the beautiful landscapes, how clean everything is. Everyone's super careful with the ecosystem. Described as very pale straw, fresh and exuberant release from 2022. The talks of the vintage. And that's kind of a slight a little bit because 2022 was a difficult vintage. There was a lot of, if we're talking about harvest in March of 22, and there was a lot of difficult things that were happening in 22, but not from a quality standpoint, from a quantity standpoint. So the small harvest of 2022 really got a lot of attention. So that's speaking to the vintage. And you really see some pretty dramatic passion fruit. I love that description, passion fruit into this wine. Absolutely. Kefir lime. Well, there you go one step further. Kefir lime leaf. Well, that's an obscure, but man, you had me at kefir lime. I like the lime notion, but the leaf, I'm not sure how many times you've played around with kefir lime leaves, but my references are not that many. But I can, using the imagination, I get it. It's got, that lemon lime is absolutely right there. Just how do you describe it? Well, this guy fell in love with the idea of speaking about the leaf. Um, the palate has a textural text has some textural elements that come um, from the vineyard with succulence and sophistication. 93 points, Wine Spectator, appealingly supple, uh, fleshy texture. Mango, another really good one. Mangoes and passion fruits. Can you follow either of those? Salted melon, maybe even like whiffs of sea salt. White peach, here we go. Uh, Linseed oil, hint of linseed oil. That is also one of those references I would have to say I've never done that. Never, don't know what that is, but okay. Um, Dried sage and fresh acidity. Man, we're all over the place here, all over the sensory spectrum, because this wine does kind of play with our senses quite a bit, as does the winery itself. Beautiful, beautiful. Fantastic. We're going to go to the next wine. How you guys doing out there? You doing all right? Haven't seen some of you in a little while. I was traveling for a little bit in France last week, had kind of crazy happenings and had to do my Zoom in a hotel room using my phone and a laptop. Wasn't optimal, tested me in every possible shape and form. This week I almost choked to death on wine number one. Let's go. I'm going to get you back into here. We'll finish up with a couple more photos, Craggy. Man, they really broke the rules here, sent me so many photos. Here's our wine slide, $22. It's super competitive in the New Zealand category. And at $21.95, I believe this is one of the better selling wines in at his price. There's a couple that kind of live here. It's hard for them to get past $30. But I'm sure that day will come. But you could see really good quality here and price value, hard to beat. Hard to beat. Wine number three. I'm excited to be able to taste this with you because this is a wine that comes into stock, and you've got like basically the decision is, would you like to own this wine this year? Because today's the day you decide, and if you pass today, there might not be a tomorrow. This is Robin Lail, who's a dear friend of Learn About Wine myself. I've admired her for so long. She's such an amazing individual, but she's really been instrumental in some of my tastings in the past. She's just a beautiful woman in Napa Valley, and she is a leader. She comes from an incredibly important wine family to the Napa Valley. She grew up in Yountville, and that's where their family home was because her dad ran a small chateau style winery up the street between Oakville and Rutherford called Inglenook. Uh, from the 1950s to the late 1960s, her father ran this prestigious estate, and she grew up in wine. Um, didn't mean that the family had a lot of money, that's for sure, but really, made some great connections, made some good investments, bought some land, got involved in business dealings with Christian Moex and some really top families. So she's really been instrumental for her entire career. Her father's name was uh, Robin Daniels, Robin Daniel Lail. Let me see if I got that right. Our story began in 1879 when Robin Daniel Lail's great granduncle Gustav Niebaum, well, there you go, a little bit more family lineage. Gustav Niebaum pioneered fine winemaking in the Napa Valley when he founded Inglenook Winery. See, I undersold that story. I didn't realize that Gustav Niebaum was her granduncle, but Inglenook was passed down to Robin's grandfather and then to her father. There we go. Okay. John Daniels Jr. So J. Daniels is the name of her high-end red wine cuvee, and it is named after her father. He was a true innovator. And then again, she went on to work, literally work for, at, and was involved in Robert Mondavi, Harlan, Christian Moex's setting up of his property known as Dominus, and many things that won't make this slideshow, but she's been so busy and so involved in so many things. Uh, Robin's dream of creating her own extraordinary wines set flight when she and her daughters, Erin and Shannon, assembled a multifaceted team of talent that set her on her own by launching Lail Vineyards. Along the way, she hooked up with a young winemaker that was working with Christian Moex at Dominus by the name of Philippe Melka. And Melka got involved with her wines in an early phase and started to really show his panache. And the Lail wines were getting noticed. I will say, she got 100 points for the J. Daniels cuvee, and that's probably all she needed to do to get really rocking. But then the Sauvignon Blancs really started to become the star of the Lail show because there's so many great cabs. But have you tried the Sauvignon Blanc? And so she has two levels that I get to see. One is her high-end Sauvignon Blanc, which we actually still have a couple of bottles in the store, and it's called Georgia. And Georgia is potentially, you know, there's all these wonderful things we could say about how great it is, but I think Georgia really is potentially Napa Valley's most successful Sauvignon Blanc. I can't think of anything else that has achieved its high-end worship because the Georgia today is approximately $200 a bottle for Sauvignon Blanc, and there aren't many that have gone there. There are many that are about to try. They are increasing in number, um, and it's because Philippe Melka worked not only for Dominus, but when he was in France, he was a winemaker at Chateau Aubryon. And Aubryon is famous for their white. And he brought that Aubryon style and knowledge of Sauvignon Blanc to the Napa Valley. And where he first put that knowledge on display, you can argue, okay, maybe there was a winery that he did it first, but where he really championed it and got the credit was at Lail. And Georgia was the wine. Now, the Blueprint wine is the second Sauvignon Blanc of Robin Lail, and it's made from, certainly Georgia is a very specific set of Sauvignon Blanc within her vineyard holdings, and it's hard to get anything out of Philippe Malka about what he's doing on that sort, but it's really about selection. I mean, he's using red wine type of selection ideas in the grapes that go into Georgia, down to the berry. Okay. With this wine here, it's a little bit more of an estate wine made by the same hands with the same ideas, but not quite the same selection. And potentially not quite as much use of wood and things like that. So Blueprint, Philippe's last name is Melka, Melka. And if you ever want to go see Philippe Melka or at least visit his winery, I send me a note and I'd be more than happy to introduce you to the winery. They have a wonderful tasting team there, and Philippe is often there working hard. So let's taste this, go back in and see those slides. So again, we're on Blueprint, and this is the 2022. 23 is probably going to be available fairly soon. She does have these incredible sites in Yountville that go back to the family holdings. And then she also has her estate, which is really close to Pritchard Hill, but I think it just carries Napa Valley appellation on the bottle. So when she blends Yountville and that elite Pritchard Hill fruit, and I'm not 100% sure it's on Pritchard Hill, and you can't even say Pritchard Hill if you wanted to, because Pritchard Hill is actually a name of a place that's been trademarked by a single winery. So no one's allowed to call their wine Pritchard Hill without paying for it to be able to do that. So Blueprint is a Napa Valley, those two sites that we just talked about. And it's 2022. It's about $65. So let's taste that together. I wanted to see my tasting note, but I didn't get there. Let me click through to the website itself. You know, we spent a lot of time on the website for just these purposes and put some reviews. Suckling gave it 92. Okay. Aromas of candied citrus, ruby grapefruit, green honeydew melon, followed by tarragon, whetstone, medium bodied, refreshing acidity, and underlying chalky tones on the palate. Got to spit that one out. Can you feel the the weight here is increased? And I also think that, you know, because we're not in a super cold zone anymore, some of that weight is being allowed to be discovered because it doesn't have that long acidic tail like we had in New Zealand or in Sancerre. But that tail is just maybe long enough to give us quite a nice, romantic, luxurious mouthfeel. A little bit weightier, more concentration, tension kind of relaxed a little bit. And this is certainly not blousy or, you know, unstructured, but really does have some perfect balance to it. And I think that's the mark of a quality wine, and is knowing how much, you know, you can really clamp on to certain accents in the wine. And Melka is a master of that. Any comments anyone want to make about this wine or any of the wines that we've had so far? Now would be an incredible time.
I just have to say, you know, so far they've all been really nice. This seems like it's maybe a little fuller than the French or the New Zealand ones we tasted, but they're all beautiful so far. Good job.
Thank you. No, I mean, I'm so happy you like it.
Love it.
Natalie, it's always great to see you on board. How have things been?
Good. We're loving this.
We've
We
got we've got two Natalies tonight.
Oh,
Look at that. I didn't mean to do that.
that's okay. You go ahead first.
We got the Guptas in Orange County.
yes.
Cheers.
Cheers. We love it. And actually, we were really intrigued. So we just went back to the first
The Sancerre.
the Sancerre, yes, and came back to this, and it's incredible the body that this one has in comparison to that now.
Yeah, it almost and the order was perfect because that Sancerre is now becoming so mellow in comparison when at first it seemed like it had a little bit of a bite to it. And now it seems mellow. But this I was getting a little bit of loquat. I thought
Yeah.
in the back end. I don't know if you noticed the same
Yeah,
thing.
I ate my body weight in loquats when I was a kid. I can totally get that.
Come on over. We have a whole bunch.
All right. It's loquat season, huh?
Yes.
Yeah, and that's the thing about, fruits like that. They don't last very long, so you don't really get those distributed in grocery stores and stuff. So a lot of people haven't had a loquat, but they are really good when you can just pick them right off the tree. And they don't have a lot of acidity. They have a lot of flavor. And I think that is a great description right there.
Appreciate that.
Cheers.
Thanks, guys. Wonderful to see you.
Good to see you too. I'm glad your vacation went well too.
Oh, thanks. Yeah, we call it a working vacation, but it was definitely a spectacular time to be in France.
Not a bad line of work, Ian.
It's how I pay myself with those great memories. I can't pay the rent with that, but it doesn't hurt so much, Thank you very much, Natalie. And I'm gonna come to you now in Nebraska.
Yes, hello.
How's it there?
It's good. We actually have really good weather right now. So,
All right. I can see a little on your cheeks.
yeah, a little bit of redness. We've been super busy. My daughter graduates high school and we have her party coming up this weekend. So we've just been trying to plan, and we have T-3 hours until the first guests are arriving. So
All right.
I'm just gonna enjoy a little wine tasting here before it starts to get crazy this weekend.
Fun. And is chef husband getting the appetizers ready?
Oh yeah. Right. We're gonna do a baked potato bar.
Oh, fun. That's great. All right. Well, let's get back into the wine action and see what we have next. Oh yes, a commercial break. That's what we have next. Next week, I'm not even sure how many spots we have left. This has been a pretty nice performer for us. It's our white wine workshop, and we're focusing on some iconic wines of France next Wednesday. So if there are spots still available, grab them soon. We've got a big rosé show about 2 weeks from now with some of my favorite rosés, and back to the wines. So now we're in wine number 4. And, as we're cruising across the country, across the world, tasting great Sauvignon Blancs, it would be wrong not to include Mary Edwards, who's been one of our top performing wines. It's just a real people pleaser. And you'll see it's quite a different style than what maybe the Lail, it could be compared to it, but you'll see there's some differences here, some big differences in place. We go from the Napa Valley to the Russian River, and there's some great artwork on the label done by a guy who's made some major wine labels, comes from Berkeley, started in the 1960s, made a ton of labels in the 60s and the 70s. David Lance Goins is the artist, and you can tell David Lance Goins' artwork immediately. And he's got some really interesting things that he's done. He's even had labels banned before because he loves putting some nudity on the label. And then back then they were, you know, a little more conservative than they are today with wine labels. Russian River, where are we? We're in the heart of Sonoma County, which is actually quite a large and dynamic county. And the Russian River is kind of the heart of it, right in the middle, very close to the oceans and kind of trapped by their physical features. So the Russian River really is kind of where all the fog collects and a lot of the rain, because it's a very wet area. So Chardonnay and Pinot Noir kind of really thrive there. Mary Edwards goes back into the 1990s. And I was actually surprised to find out it was a brand that didn't start until the 1990s. When I hear 1997, I'm like, wow, that's kind of when my wine career hit another gear as I started selling wine for big companies. And I always thought Mary Edwards was kind of the bomb even at that time. So she really got up and running in a big and powerful way, kind of at the right time too. 97 was such, you know, a epic time for the wine world and expansion, growth, and probably the doubling of the audience within a very short period of time. She has a great reputation, worked with some really important winemakers, and really brought her style into a man's world. Because prior to 1997, you could probably count the number of female winemakers in California on one hand. So the fact that she was naming the brand after herself as well as being the winemaker, that's pretty independent for the moment, for that time. And she has always championed Sonoma. You know, her expertises are definitely in the world of Pinot, Chard, and Sauvignon Blanc, a little bit of Zinfandel too. I fell in love with her with Zin, because you know I'm a Zin head, and I just love some of the Zinfandels that she made. And she's so consistent in her process and her approach. You can almost tell that she makes the wine. It's quite interesting. But the description here, first swirl in the glass releases fragrances of white peaches, lime zest. Notice it doesn't say lime zest leaf. Delicate white pineapple, ripe stone fruit. Upon entry, the creamy texture is buoyed by some bright acidity. Ruby red grapefruit, absolutely. White blossoms, citrus flowers. Beautiful, bright floral nature of the Sauvignon Blanc is perfectly suited for both seafood and Asian spicy cuisine. James Suckling leans into the stone fruits, fresh tropical, and jasmine. Full-bodied. Okay, so now we're seeing a little bit more aggressiveness with some time and use of wood. There was some use of wood in the Melka, but more texture to the Melka was achieved through lees stirring and things like cement egg than wood. But Mary is older school and knew how to make the wood sing for her. And that's what we're getting here. And there's just a little bit of like vanilla and honey that kind of shine through here. James points out lightly honeyed on the palate. Okay, now he's lining up those floral references. Lavender and lily, steely, Loire-like. Always an excellent Sauvignon Blanc, drink or hold. That nose is gorgeous, isn't it? But it's so different, so different. It's got all those things that kind of, I mean, it's kind of a Chardonnay styling, with that wood kind of kissing the edges of the Sauvignon Blanc fruit, whereas, Chardonnay is more apple and pear, Sauvignon Blanc's more that melon and floral. And I think that's why we like it so much, because it does have some of those similar references with Chardonnay, even though we're talking about a totally different ingredient with Sauvignon Blanc. You can get lost in the nose. I mean, it's just so dynamic. This wine really started to ramp up. This was my best-selling $39 wine for years. Two pretty big price increases over because 2020 just absolutely was tough. So a lot of winemakers maybe made some, and I don't think I ever saw 2020 from this brand, but when you have to write off a vintage and then you get the next vintage, you're not able to slowly introduce a price increase. It kind of comes in with a hammer and a nail. And that's kind of what happened here. We almost took a $10 price increase, and I wanted to go all the way to 50 with it, because from a percentage standpoint, no one's making any money, but the price increase is just so dramatic. And there is a lot of competition out there. There's other people that are following me to the graveyard at $47.95, but this is kind of where we can get it and see it working. And a lot of people do buy this wine multiple bottles, even cases at a time. So you want to be lined up to get the volume with this brand, as it is mostly sold here in California. Yeah, there is this. I'm just going to click through and make sure that it's 100% Sauvignon Blanc, and it is 100% Sauvignon Blanc. You might think, okay, maybe there's Semillon, maybe it's kind of Bordeaux-like, because it is definitely a little bit more Bordeaux than I think Loire, to be fair. That's a really good question. Think I'm answering the questions as fast as they come in. Thanks for the questions. I love them. They're in the chat box, but you're also welcome to ask me right here. Just come on out. When we zoom into wine, we're talking with the people that are tasting with us and getting your feedback live. And that's what I really enjoy doing this. Otherwise, I could just record this and play the video, and that would be no fun probably. But what I love about it is the interaction and getting your real thoughts involved. And if you don't like the wine, it's great to tell me that too. But I'm not sure you could say that about this one.
This one's my favorite so far, Ian. I love it.
Definitely plays with some different ideas. And I'm glad that it's so different from the Lail, because honestly, without doing this with you guys, I tasted the Lail like a year ago. Okay, it's in my memory. Liked it. Made some thoughts about it. Tasted the Mary Edwards like 6 months ago. Both those wines have changed so much, and I love them both. And being able to taste side by side and compare and contrast is really the most important thing to me. And then kind of plays right into my personality too. Some people would rather just drink one bottle of something and not think about it. Whereas me, I'd rather taste 6 tastes of 6 different wines and really see how, the pecking order is, what differences are there, the difference of place, the difference of vintage, the difference of technique, style. All those things are fun for me. All right, we move into wine number 5, moving along kind of quickly. Sauvignon Blanc is our topic, and huge, important grape variety in the world of wine. We're trying to keep the examples pretty worldly, but man, there was just so much to focus on in the Napa Valley because as I was kind of alluding to, Philippe, when he brought his winemaking ideas, Philippe Melka, to the Napa Valley was kind of like living in two worlds. They had these $100 cabs that are now $200 cabs, and they were making these $30 Sauvignon Blancs. And the separation was getting a little silly because $100 cab, $200 cab buyer is probably going to now buy the cab and not buy the Sauvignon Blanc, and then buy, some great white of another country, or maybe drink Chardonnay, or maybe drink Burgundy, Bordeaux Blanc, because it's, the wines aren't paired. They're not equally yoked. They're not really coming from the same quality angle. So Philippe woke Napa Valley up, and for better or for worse, everyone's paying attention, and there are some great Napa Valley whites coming for your pocketbook. I'm going to show you one that I adore here. This is the Krutz family. Who is the Krutz family? Well, that's kind of the point. I like to carry stuff that a lot of people haven't tried before. This is a small, teeny family that really got started a little further south in Monterey County, but put their pennies together and started acquiring some vineyards in Sonoma, and then a winemaking facility. And then they hooked up with some great grape growers like Beckstoffer, and they kind of make this volume level, light priced wine called Krutz family. Maybe it carries Sonoma appellation or Monterey County. They even still have those vineyards in Monterey County. So they kind of make some appellated wines. And then they have this super tier that they make at Krutz that's all the single vineyard stuff. And they're going out and getting the very, very best vineyards that they can get. And Mr. Beckstoffer, that's Andy Beckstoffer, went out and saw this opportunity to really brand the vineyards, because when you bring like all these tools to the wine industry, the best locations, the best vineyard management teams, great ideas, and obviously you got to have great customers for that. He charges a lot of money for his fruit because he knows it's worth it. And you could put Beckstoffer on the label, and that's his whole program. And he grows very little Sauvignon Blanc and even less Chardonnay. So there's only like 2 producers of Beckstoffer fruited Chardonnay, and there's maybe a dozen Sauvignon Blanc producers. This Melrose vineyard is really gorgeous and optimally located, very well farmed. The wine has a particular bright acidity with layered stone fruits, peach, lemon tart, subtle vanilla influence from the barrels. And it says that this is the first vintage from Sauvignon Blanc that we put through secondary fermentation. So maybe in the prior vintage, they arrested secondary fermentation. But secondary fermentation is the conversion of malic acid to lactic acid, or malolactic fermentation. And it's more or less a conversion because the bacteria is just waiting for the fermentation to stop. And fermentation is the yeast eating the sugars. But then the bacteria have this access to this to these acid molecules that they didn't have prior to fermentation. And the end of the fermentation is kind of like the starter gun. Go! And those winemakers, they're watching the malolactic, and some people are like, hey, I like to have a lot of crispy, hard acidity in this wine. So we're going to add a little bit of sulfur and preserve the wine just a little bit. But what you're really doing with the sulfur is killing the bacteria. And so the sulfur naturally occurring, just small, minute amount, can be added, and it arrests the malolactic. But here they decided not to do it, and they went and took a little bit of a leap and said, hey, we got enough structure and body and balance here to go through the secondary fermentation process. Still a family operation, and they don't have a Philippe Malka or a famous winemaker, but the team has been around long enough that they know what they're doing, and they're very good in their vineyards, and obviously sourcing some fruit here. This is like $55 in Napa Valley from a Beckstoffer vineyard. I think this is the least expensive Beckstoffer wine that you can find. And 2021 is a great vintage. Let's see, I'm going to taste it with you now. The nose, maybe because of the primary or the malolactic fermentation, nose a little bit less like flagpole, like a little more soft, gentle nose. You can smell some of that vanilla. I can even smell just a little kiss of matchstick, which I like, by the way. Round and creamy. Doesn't quite have the same assertive oomph that the Mary Edwards had with some of that use of wood. I think they're leaning into the quality of the fruit a little bit more, letting it shine through. Not as much wood reference here in the mouth and in the finish, but similarly styled, some of the Mary Edwards, and similar in Napa Valley in its presentation, a little bit more rounded, creamier. When if you're sitting at the starting line of a race and you're able to drive the new Porsche, and then let's try the Lamborghini, let's try the Ferrari. It's nice to be able to do that, and to pick one, it gets a little harder because there's so many reasons for each one. I think some of the other wines may have a little bit more excitement involved here, but sitting here with this wine and tasting it and talking it through, I hope you could really feel the unique quality of that Melrose vineyard kind of really speaking through the finish of this wine. It's not a winemaking miracle here. It's just the fruit quality is sensational.
So Ian, you said matchstick, and I had written down sulfur, but I thought, well, that's not exactly what I mean. And I wouldn't think that matchstick would be something that I would like, but whatever it does, it just makes this really a beautiful wine
Yeah, you can get it right on the top of the nose there as you're about to about to taste it. And that can come from, some pretty expensive wood barrels, because what they're doing with those barrels, they're caramelizing, toasting the wood. So I think some of this wine sees some pretty expensive wood that is bringing that matchstick quality forward. And a lot of the wines that we've tasted, probably, the fruit cost here for the Sauvignon Blanc is, I'm going to guess it's $10,000 a ton. Okay. For the Sauvignon Blanc, because of the Beckstoffer name. I'm just a guess. It's just a guess. And from that 1 ton of fruit, you're going to get 600 bottles. So I don't know if you could do the math, and that even figures out to make $10,000, but the 600 bottles, then you're really kind of using this wine, if you're the Krutz family, as like, hey, come taste everything else we make, because we do make this small little project, and they may make it for their wine club and some top restaurants and stuff, but this is not a big production. I think their total production for this wine is maybe 400 cases. So it's probably 4 tons of this fruit, and that may be an exaggeration too, maybe even less, but I think it's pretty small. And so if you're making a teeny amount and you incorporate one brand new Chateau Lafite barrel at $1,600 for the wood, it's going to assert itself with that little nuance. And some people are looking for that, and they want, how do I get that matchstick element in my nose? Their barrel guy goes, I got just the thing. The melon nature here is a little bit more prevalent here too. A little more base notes and melon rather than those brighter grapefruit expressions. I think it's maybe a little easy to put that wine down and move on, but I really do like it, and it's pretty special.
Hey, Ian, just really quick,
Yeah.
does Krutz, what else does Krutz do? It like, is Sauv Blanc kind of their thing, or what are they most known for?
Well, they're definitely making a host of different wines. They have some great cab, and they do a couple single vineyard high tier Beckstoffer cabs, but they're really kind of, majority of their wines are in the value price point. They kind of have like this tier that's just for restaurants to pour by the glass too, and they're kind of a like, discover us type of brand, and they're keeping their pricing really sharp, and their wines are appellated, pretty large appellations, not necessarily like Russian River or Sonoma Coast, but more Sonoma County. And they make a Napa cab, a Sonoma cab, and some of their Chard and Pinot holdings are down in Monterey County. So,
Nice.
but if you visit their website, you can see they're not shy on how many wines they make, and they make quite a few different things, but not a lot of any of it.
The actual winemaker on this one,
It's a Krupps family, so they
just the family. Okay,
keep that to the different family holds. Yeah.
okay.
All right. So when I put this, event together, I said, well, what wine can I make the star of the show? Because if you visited my Merchant of Wine, excuse me for my use of the website, but let me just show you how you could look for Sauvignon Blanc in the right way. You can go to shop, go to white wines. You'll see, I had to move a little bar out of the way, sorry. You see Sauvignon Blanc, you click on that. If you want to look for the fancy stuff, you could sort it by price point, high to low, and it kind of flips the website upside down. And so we can look at the top of the food chain first, and there's that Lail, Georgia at 175, some Smith Ho Lafitte, some Chateau Pop Clement. These are top Bordeaux whites. Got a brand called Arkenstone that could have been put at the top of the show. 96 pointer. I could have put oh, by the way, this winemaker, super fantastic, Arkenstone. He is involved in so many cool projects, and really is a great winemaker that I love to kind of explore and taste everything that he makes. Andy Erickson is over at Cervantes. But we've got a couple of Philippe Melka wines here. One is called Aleron. This is the daughter of O'Shaughnessy with Philippe Melka. And here's Plinth, which is what I chose to pick. I should be getting some more Realm Sauvignon Blanc as well. Knew that was going to run short, so that could make it. But there's just there's a growing set of these $100+ Sauvignon Blancs, and Plinth kind of sneaks in at around $90. And so that's what we're going to taste now. This is $90 efforts. Let's see how we go. This is 2022. In 2021, it was one of my favorite wines on the planet. And I have not yet tasted the 22. I didn't even taste it when we made these jars, because if you knew what I went through when I got back from France, I had one hell of a head cold. And so I let one of my staff taste the wines, and I'm saving it for tonight to be able to taste the Plinth. So I'm going to taste it with you. I'm going to give you my honest opinion. I suspect I'm going to freak out. It's so good because this wine was so good last year. And this is coming from truly important ground. This is out of Pritchard Hill. They can't say that. It says it on my slide, but they can't say it on the label. They can only say Napa Valley. But Plinth is a partnership between Flora and Jason Chang, and their single vineyard called Huyi Vineyard, which is really a celebrated single vineyard for a lot of producers that want to make wine in the expensive part of Pritchard Hill, right next to the Colgans and 100 Acres and the other top brands of David Arthur's up there. The Chapelet family is the family that owns the trademark to Pritchard Hill. So they're the only ones that are allowed to put Pritchard Hill on their label for the time being. That may change in years to come. And if I were them, I would make some sort of arrangement to allow others to say Pritchard Hill, because it's certainly becoming a neighborhood and everyone's talking about it, but not able to say it. So these guys used to own a wine brand called Nine Sons. And it was built, Nine Sons Winery was built on the Huyi Vineyards. Well, the problem for the Nine Sons brand is everyone else in the wine kingdom was taking their fruit and making better wine with it than they were. And so the Huyi Vineyard became like really notoriously great. And then people would say, "Oh, have you tried Nine Sons?" And they're like, not really, didn't really impress me or whatever. But they own the Huyi Vineyard. And so the Changs figured that out pretty quickly. And they said, let's let some of the greats go with it on our fruit and save some of the energy and pain of making our own wine. And Realm took over their vineyard. So they still have this, they still own the vineyard, I think. Realm bought the long-term lease for it or something like that. But maybe they bought it in a full-on transaction. I'm kind of forgetting what the little number said on the page, but Realm has been in serious acquisition mode. It's going to be a brand that you're going to hear more and more of over the coming decade. Some titans of the wine industry are involved at Realm, and the wines are just too good to be ignored. I use them in many dinners and tastings that I'm showcasing around right now. The Realm wines are real. I had some Realm Sauvignon Blanc last year. It sold out. It was not available. It's now in stock and could have been forced into this show, but I went with last year's favorite and the very new 2022 Plinth that we're showing right now. Here's a kind of a look down the lanes of the vineyard. You could see out into the Napa Valley. Continuum is nearby. Here's the description. Sauvignon Blanc dazzles with vibrant perfume, notes of apricot and honeysuckle. A short while later, crisp hints of freshly grated lemon zest. And later still, velvety nuttiness appears. These enchanting aromas open up on the palate with an uplifting crispness balanced acidity, and an initial sweetness that evolves to a mid creaminess, I'm sorry, mild creaminess and subtle minerality with notable hints of tropical fruits, melon, and a dash of almond extract. Some more photos to show you just how high up the vineyard is. This is right in the vineyard. I've stood right there. And here's some of their Sauvignon Blanc. Let's taste it. You know, when milk is making your wine, there's like certain guarantees you're going to get what you're looking for. Neville, thank you, man. Neville and Natalie. Strawberry, guava, jam, almond. What do you think of that? That nuttiness really is pretty prevalent. That there's honey, I'm trying to just, I think it is almond, but it might be even like hazelnut and almond, or almond has kind of like, if you're baking with almond, you can really get this sweetness that I think is what I'm getting. It's like a almond, almost is it marzipan? Is that almond? I think marzipan. Wow. Texturally, this is like, you know, we saw some wines that had a lot of personality and spunk and some muscle and some edges. This thing is so silky and so pretty and so, but it's bold and different and a little bit more like Bordeaux in that way. Lots of lees stirring and texture, and it's pretty cranked up, and I'm not sure it's quite ready for the prime time yet. I think this is where, you know, one of those ironies of wine, the more you pay, maybe the longer you should be waiting. And this is a younger 2022. Did we even have a 22? So this is our first 22, and it's kind of in that baby mode. It still hasn't really put on the weight that this wine will. This is like a car that hasn't even been given its fourth or fifth gear. And, you know, with some of the cars I was mentioning earlier, they even have like 6, 7, 8. And this thing's going to continue to get more explosive. And this is what's exciting about Sauvignon Blanc, is they're really getting a red wine mindset engaged. And this is why, you know, I have been saying for a while, you know, a lot of people, I know, you know, these people, everyone, all they drink is red. I drink red wine. Why? Because red wine was freaking great. And now white wine is going to start winning some of these people over because of things like this. This is what people have been waiting for. They're like, okay, $200 reds make me happy. Well, $200 whites might make you happy too. And this is what's going to happen when people get more excited about these. I'm going to say goodnight, everybody. Thank you very much. I hope you had a good time, and we'll see you again next time.
Thanks.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Cheers, everybody.